I never thought my own family would turn against me the moment I finally found some peace in life. I wasn't born rich. I waited tables during the day, worked night shifts at a call center, saved every dollar I could, skipped vacations, skipped birthday dinners, and even sold my old car to avoid a loan. When I finally held the keys to my first home, I cried in the empty living room. I didn't buy a mansion, just a cozy 3-bedroom house with a small backyard and a tiny porch. But to me, it meant freedom. It meant safety. It meant I didn't have to rely on anyone. For a few months, things were perfect. I fixed up the kitchen, planted flowers by the mailbox, and rescued a dog from the shelter. I thought my hard work had finally paid off. I thought my parents would be proud. But when they visited for the first time, instead of congratulating me, they walked through the house like inspectors. My dad checked every room like he was already planning something. My mom kept saying how kid-friendly it looked and how Ryan's daughters would love the backyard. At first, I didn't understand. Then they sat me down like I was a teenager being scolded. My dad didn't even soften his words. He said I should move out and let my brother and his family live here. Just like that. No discussion. No offer. No apology. He spoke like he was assigning room. He said I didn't need all this space because I was single. He said Ryan's daughters deserved stability. He said a good sister would sacrifice for her brother. I stared at them, speechless. All those nights I spent crying from exhaustion, they weren't there. All those times I was too broke to even buy groceries, they didn't offer help. And now that I finally stood on my own 2 feet, they wanted to push me back down. When I refused, my dad stood up like he was disgusted with me. My mom called me selfish. She said I was turning my back on family. But wasn't that exactly what they were doing to me? After they left, I sat alone in my living room. I looked at the walls I had painted myself, the couch I had bought with my own money, the floor I had cleaned by hand, and I realized something. Blood doesn't make someone family. Respect does. Support does. Kindness does. If someone only loves you when you give them something, they don't love you. They use you. That was the day I decided I wasn't going to be used anymore. I worked too hard to let someone else enjoy what they didn't earn. If that makes me selfish, then fine. I'll be selfish. I'd rather be alone in a home built on my effort than surrounded by people who see me as nothing but a convenience. They wanted me to feel guilty. Instead, they made me stronger. Ryan was always treated like he was made of gold. When we were kids, I had to earn everything. If I wanted a new backpack, I had to wait until Christmas or buy it myself. But if Ryan even mentioned wanting something, my parents got it the next day. He played football in high school, and people loved him. My dad went to every game, cheered like Ryan was already in the NFL. When I graduated with honors, my parents didn't even throw a small dinner for me. But when Ryan scored 1 touchdown, they acted like he cured cancer. Even when he messed up, they covered for him. He crashed my dad's truck once while drunk, and my parents blamed his friends for distracting him. He failed college classes because he partied too much, and my parents said the teachers were too strict. He maxed out credit cards on useless things, but my parents paid them off without question. Meanwhile, I had to explain every small expense if I ever needed help. Then he met Jessica. She was pretty and loud, the kind of person who posts everything about her life but never works much. They moved in together right away, got married fast, and had 2 kids before they could even afford diapers. My parents babysat for free, paid their rent, bought their groceries, and even helped them lease a car. I'm not saying helping your kids is wrong, but watching them bend over backward for Ryan while acting like I was a burden made me feel invisible. It wasn't that Ryan was evil. He just knew he would never face real consequences. If he lost a job, my parents called his boss and begged for another chance. If he got in trouble, they blamed the world for being unfair to him. He never had to learn responsibility because Frank always cleaned up his mess. I remember one time when I was struggling with my apartment rent because my work hours were cut. I asked if I could stay at my parents' house for a month until I got back on my feet. My dad told me I was too old to depend on them. The same week, I found out they had given Ryan $5,000 to go on a family trip to Florida. Living in Ryan's shadow made me realize something. Being the golden child isn't about being good. It's about being favored. It doesn't matter how hard you work if someone else is always placed above you just because they were chosen. My whole life, I was told to be proud of my brother, to support him, to understand him. But no one ever stopped to understand me. No one ever asked how it felt to watch someone who did half the work get twice the reward. And later, when they tried to take my house for him, I finally understood. Ryan wasn't just the favorite. He was the excuse they used to justify betraying me. It was a normal Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a knock on the door. My parents were standing there with serious faces, like they were about to deliver important news. I thought maybe something bad had happened. I let them in, offered them tea, but they refused. They didn't even sit down right away. My dad stood in the middle of the living room, looking around like he was checking the place one last time before making a decision. Then he said it. Not softly, not kindly, just straight and cold. He told me that I needed to move out. He said Ryan and his kids were struggling in their apartment and needed a proper house. He said my house was perfect for raising a family and that I was lucky enough to have it, so I should give it up. I didn't even react at first because I honestly thought he was joking, but his face was serious. My mom nodded like this was already decided. There was no, how would you feel about this? No, would you be willing to help? It was presented like an order, like I was some kind of placeholder living in a space meant for someone else. I asked them where they expected me to go. My dad shrugged and said I could find a small apartment or move in with a friend. He spoke like I was a teenager crashing on couches, not a grown woman who bought her own home. He said, "You're single. You don't need 3 bedrooms," as if being unmarried made me less deserving of comfort, as if I didn't work hard to enjoy what I earned. What shocked me most was how calm they were while trying to uproot my life. My mom even tried to soften it by saying, "Think of the girls. They deserve a backyard." I looked out the window at the little patch of grass I had been so proud of, and for the first time, it felt like it wasn't mine anymore. Not because they had taken it, but because they had decided they were entitled to it. I asked them why Ryan couldn't just get his own house the way I did. My dad snapped and said, "Not everyone has it easy like." That line almost made me laugh. Easy. Working double shifts, surviving on instant noodles, saving every spare dollar. Was that easy? The more I questioned them, the more annoyed they became. My mom said I was being difficult, and that family makes sacrifices. But what sacrifice had they or Ryan ever made for me? Why was I always expected to give while others only took? They didn't leave until they made me feel like I was the bad guy for not agreeing. They walked out disappointed, shaking their heads like I had betrayed them. But as I closed the door behind them, I realized something important. This wasn't a request. It was an attempt to corner me. They believed I would fold out of guilt. They truly didn't know me at all. The moment I said no, the whole mood in the room changed. I didn't scream or make a big scene. I just calmly said, "This is my house. I'm not giving it to anyone." I even smiled a little because I still believed they would realize how ridiculous they sounded. But instead of backing down, they acted like I had committed some kind of crime. My mom's face tightened, and she crossed her arms like she was truly offended. She didn't ask me to reconsider. She went straight to calling me selfish. She said I cared more about walls and furniture than about family. I reminded her that I had worked for those walls and furniture, but she didn't want to hear it. My dad stepped in with that cold voice he used whenever he wanted to control the situation. He said, "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" The way he said it made it sound like my entire life was some kind of debt I owed them. I wanted to ask him what exactly they had done for me. I wanted to remind him of all the times they helped Ryan while I stood alone. But I knew it wouldn't matter. They weren't looking for fairness. They were looking for submission. Then Ryan spoke up. He had been quiet the whole time, sitting back like a king waiting for his servants to solve his problem. When he realized I wasn't giving in, he finally opened his mouth, not to reason with me but to insult me. He called me heartless. He said I didn't care about his kids. He even tried to make me feel guilty by saying, "You'll be the reason my daughters grow up without a real home." That line hit me hard, not because I believed it, but because I realized how low they were willing to go to manipulate me. They were ready to use innocent children as tools. I looked at Ryan and asked him, "Why don't you buy your own house?" He didn't answer. He just stood up and stormed out like he was the victim. My parents followed him, shaking their heads at me like I had ruined everything. The house was silent after they left, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt cold. I stood there with my hands shaking, not because I regretted my decision, but because I finally saw the truth. It wasn't just about the house. It was about control. They weren't disappointed because I refused to help. They were angry because for once I refused to obey. That day, I understood something painful but necessary. Some people don't love you. They love what they can get from you. And once you stop giving, they stop pretending. Let them walk out. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only stay when I'm useful. After that argument, I thought they would cool off and realize how unreasonable they were. Instead, things only got worse. They didn't try to talk it out. They tried to pressure me into giving up. It started with unannounced visits. I'd be drinking my morning coffee or folding laundry, and suddenly there would be a knock at the door. I'd open it expecting a delivery, only to find my parents standing there with strangers. Real estate agents. They didn't even warn me. They just walked in like they still had authority over me. They would proudly show the agents around, saying things like, "This would be perfect for a growing family." I had to stand there and remind them every single time that the house was mine and not for sale. One agent even apologized to me in private, clearly realizing I had no idea what was going on. But my parents weren't embarrassed at all. They acted like I was being dramatic for not cooperating. Then came the messages from Jessica. She didn't call to talk like an adult. She sent long, guilt-filled texts saying things like, "Kids need this house more than you, and you'll understand when you become a mother." As if motherhood is the only reason someone deserves a home. At one point, she even hinted that my refusal was cruel and punishing innocent children. But I knew it wasn't about the kids. It was about her wanting a free upgrade. The worst part was when my dad started bringing Ryan's daughters to visit without warning. He would show up at my front porch with them, smiling like he was about to make me melt. He told them to run around the backyard while saying things like, "See how happy they are? They deserve space to grow." The girls were innocent. They didn't know they were being used as tools. But I knew exactly what my dad was doing. He was trying to make me feel guilty enough to surrender. At first, I tried to be patient. I calmly asked them to stop coming without notice. They ignored me. I stopped answering the door. They started banging louder, calling my name like I was hiding. I blocked Jessica's number. She began using different ones. I told my dad to stop involving the kids. He said I was being heartless. It felt like I was under siege in my own home. Every day I expected someone to show up and try again. I started keeping my doors locked at all times. I stopped opening my curtains. I felt like a prisoner in the place I had worked so hard to build. They wanted me to feel guilty enough to give in. But all they did was prove that they never respected me in the first place. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as a resource, a solution to their problems. And I was done being that. Just when I thought they couldn't push further, they did. One evening, my dad called me, and his tone was different. Not angry, but cold and official. He said he had spoken to someone and was considering getting lawyers involved. He claimed that family property belongs to family and that they had a right to take back what was theirs. I almost laughed because the house was bought entirely by me. My name was on the deed. Every payment came from my bank account, but he wasn't talking about facts. He was talking about entitlement. I calmly told him he had no legal claim, but he ignored me. He said, "We helped you your whole life. That house is partly ours." I asked him to give me even one example of them helping me financially with anything related to the house. He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "A good daughter wouldn't argue like." After that call, the phone started ringing more. Cousins, uncles, even an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. They called to talk, but it wasn't really talking. They repeated things my parents had told them. They said I was ungrateful, that I had taken advantage of my parents' kindness, that Ryan deserved the house more. That's when I realized my parents were spreading lies. They told everyone that they had paid my down payment. They said I had promised to let Ryan live here someday. They acted like I tricked them. Suddenly people who didn't even know my situation were sending me long messages about doing the right thing. I wasn't even angry at first. I was shocked. Shocked that my own parents chose to lie instead of accepting no as an answer. Shocked that extended family believed them so easily. Shocked that people who never called to congratulate me on buying a house were now calling to demand I give it away. I gathered all my bank statements, every transaction. I printed the contract, the closing documents, the mortgage records. I sat there flipping through the pages, and for the first time, I wasn't just defending my house. I was defending my life, my work, my independence. The more I saw the proof in front of me, the more I realized something important. I wasn't the one who needed to explain anything. They were the ones trying to take something that didn't belong to them. They were the ones lying. They were the ones acting like bullies. Instead of giving in, I stood even firmer. If they wanted a fight, I was ready for it. Not because I loved conflict, but because I finally understood that when people try to take what you earned, you don't negotiate. You protect it. I started going through my paperwork one night, just to organize everything in case things really did turn into a legal fight. I pulled out every document I had, sorted my mortgage records, printed more copies, and kept them in folders. I wanted to be fully ready for whatever they tried next. While doing that, I remembered I had an old folder from a few years ago when my parents had me sign something related to emergency contact details. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I trusted them back then. I decided to check it, just in case. Inside were scanned copies of their will. It wasn't the full version, but it was enough. I read through it slowly, expecting to see my name somewhere. But I didn't. Instead, I saw Ryan's name listed under almost everything. Their house, their savings, their life insurance, even my mother's jewelry. Everything was already planned to go to him. I sat there in silence. I wasn't surprised that they favored him, but seeing it written in legal form made it real. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just emotional favoritism. It was intentional. They had already secured Ryan's future. They had already decided he would inherit their home. They had already given him everything they possibly could. Yet they still came after mine. That was the moment everything became clear. This wasn't about helping Ryan's kids. This wasn't about family unity. This wasn't even about fairness. It was about control. They didn't want me to have anything of my own. They didn't want me to be independent. They wanted me to remain the quiet daughter who stayed in the background, while Ryan got everything without effort. I realized something even deeper. My house represented something they didn't like, proof that I didn't need them, proof that I could succeed without their help. And some people, even parents, can't handle that. They would rather see you dependent and obedient than strong and free. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat there, feeling something different, clarity. I finally understood that no amount of explaining, arguing, or begging would ever change them. They had already chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. So I made a quiet decision that night. I wasn't going to keep defending myself to people who already believed lies. I wasn't going to fight for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to let them take one more thing from me. Not my house, not my peace, not my dignity. They had already given Ryan everything in their will. I was finally ready to give myself everything they never would. Once I understood that nothing I said would change their minds, I stopped arguing. Instead, I changed my entire approach. I knew they were expecting me to fight every step of the way. They were waiting for resistance. So I did the opposite. I called my parents one day and calmly told them that I had been thinking about it, and maybe they were right. Maybe it was time for me to move out. I said I just needed a little time to figure out where to go and pack my things. The relief in their voices was almost funny. My mom sounded proud, like she had finally talked sense into me. My dad's tone softened. He said, "I knew you'd come around." Ryan didn't say much, but I could feel his smugness from miles away. They had no idea I was already working on something. The very next morning, I contacted a realtor, not to find a place for Ryan, but to sell my house. I kept everything quiet. No public listing, no sign on the lawn, private showings only. Within a week, I got a full cash offer from a young couple who fell in love with the place immediately. They didn't haggle. They wanted it fast. I accepted. The closing process was quick and smooth. I used part of the profit to rent a beautiful luxury apartment downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, secure parking, gym access, no surprise visits from family. It wasn't just an apartment, it was peace. While all this was happening, my parents kept calling to ask when I'd be ready to hand over the keys. I told them I was still packing, still figuring things out, still dealing with paperwork. They believed me without question. What made it even more satisfying was how polite I remained. No anger, no bitterness, just calm cooperation. They thought they had won, but really I was 2 steps ahead. The day everything was finalized, I walked through my empty house one last time. Not with sadness, but with satisfaction. I had taken control of my life in a way they never expected. I wasn't just keeping my house. I was making sure they could never touch it again. They thought they broke me into giving up. All I did was flip the game on them. 2 weeks passed after the sale, and I had already settled into my new apartment. I was drinking coffee on my balcony when my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, I ignored it. Then I got a picture message from Jessica. It showed a moving truck in front of my old house. I didn't respond. Instead, I waited. An hour later, the calls turned into angry ones. First from my mother, then from my father. Finally, I answered one. He didn't even say hello. He was shouting the moment I picked up. "What did you do?" I could hear chaos in the background. I could picture it clearly. My entire family standing there, expecting to walk right in, only to find strangers answering the door. The new owners must have been just as confused, probably wondering why a group of people was demanding to be let into their house. I stayed calm. My voice was steady when I responded. "I sold it." He went silent for a moment, like he didn't understand the words. Then he exploded again, yelling that I had betrayed the family. He said I had humiliated them. He said I had ruined Ryan's life. I didn't yell back. I didn't defend myself. I simply said, "I don't owe you my life. Or my house." Then I ended the call. He tried calling again, but I blocked him. My mother tried. Blocked. Jessica tried. Blocked. Ryan sent one final text, calling me heartless and telling me I had destroyed everything. I didn't even finish reading it. Blocked. After that, I put my phone down and looked around my new place. It was quiet, peaceful. No knocking on the door. No guilt trips. No people trying to take what they didn't earn. I could imagine them standing there in front of the house, realizing there was no backup plan. No second option. For once, they had to face the consequences of their own entitlement. They thought they could walk into my life, demand what they wanted, and I would just hand it over like always. But not this time. They expected me to be weak. Instead, I was done. After that day, things went quiet. No more surprise visits. No more guilt-filled messages. No more fake concern disguised as family duty. Instead, I got one final message, short and cold. My parents said they wanted nothing to do with me anymore. They said I was no longer part of the family. I read it twice, expecting to feel something, sadness, regret, even loneliness. But I didn't. I felt relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't trying to prove my worth. I wasn't begging to be seen or respected. I was simply free. I used to think losing family was the worst thing that could happen to someone. But now I know what's worse: staying connected to people who drain you, disrespect you, and feel entitled to everything you have. Family isn't just blood. It's not about last names or shared history. It's about how people treat you. If someone constantly takes from you, belittles you, or expects you to sacrifice your happiness for theirs, that's not family. That's a chain. And I finally broke mine. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. I don't even want revenge anymore, because the real revenge already happened. I moved on. I built a life that does not revolve around their opinions. I learned to live without their approval. I wake up every morning in my own space, in my own peace, knowing everything I have is mine because I earned it. No one can take that from me. Not through guilt, not through pressure, not even through blood ties. They thought cutting me off would punish me, but really it set me free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or arguing. It's walking away. It's refusing to play their game. It's letting people sit with the consequences of their own entitlement. Let them tell their side of the story. Let them play the victims. I don't need to defend myself anymore. The truth is simple. I protected what I earned. I chose myself. And choosing yourself is never something to be ashamed of. If that makes me heartless, then so be it. I'd rather be heartless than powerless.